but this is
Live.
Good morning, everyone. It's Phil Wade. We're here today with Jerry,
Good morning.
Lisa, who's actually doing this. There's Jerry's little Periscope notification, so we're live there, and Lisa and Steve.
Hi.
Steve. All right.
So today we're going to talk about a few compliance things that'll help everybody give their clients great customer service. But before we sort of segue into that, I just wanted to give a shout out to Lana Rose Amelia. Usually she joins us, but she's not here today. She did get two deals under agreement, so she just started 3 weeks ago with Dalton
Congrats.
Wade. Yep. And then we have Lisa, who had 4 deals go under
Whoa.
agreement this weekend. 4. So that's pretty
And
awesome.
one
The
more
race
being
is on.
negotiated right now.
The race is on.
So that was good. And all 6 of those transactions came from leads through the Zillow program. So they do send us a lot of leads, and we have some space if anybody else is interested in taking any of the leads and kind of working them. So congratulations. One of Lisa's deals actually was a lady, Rochelle, that I worked with. I started working with Rochelle back in September. I worked with her until roughly around November 15th when we put an offer in, but then I sent her to my lender, and her credit was, at least for TD Bank, not where it needed to be for her to go FHA. So the lender helped her with her credit. I kept in touch with her, sent her, how you doing every so often, Merry Christmas, blah, blah, blah. But I nurtured the relationship. We had a good relationship. I was giving her good service. She actually found a house in Clearwater. It was a for sale by owner. She didn't, try to buy it herself. She actually came back to me. I was busy, gave it to Lisa. Lisa took her out there and got the thing under agreement. So again, it's the power of good customer service. So that's the foundation and hallmark of Dalton Wade. And as a real estate agent, sometimes you can put yourself ahead of your clients. It's very short-sighted. In the long run, always put your client ahead of you. It'll pay dividends, as it did for Lisa with Rochelle. So a couple things in regards to giving good customer service, that have come up. I've got the standard contract here, and we're looking at number 8. Number 8 on the contract is financing. So if you have anybody but a cash buyer, there's going to be a financing contingency, and I want everybody out there to know exactly how that works, because if the person doesn't get financed and you haven't extended their financing commitment, potentially they could lose their deposit, which would be not good. So that's a big downer on that. That should never ever happen, ever. It's 100% avoidable. So how is it avoidable? So basically, the financing is that you get a contingency. If you don't get your loan, you can get back out of the deal, and the buyer gets their money back. So there's right here under B, it talks about 45 days if left blank. So you can fill in the number of days that financing contingency exists for. But then if you read on, it's a little bit confusing, quite honestly. If you get to the last paragraph, it talks about 7 days prior to the closing. So even if your financing contingency is up to the closing date, well, if you read this, it really expired 7 days prior. So 7 days prior to the closing, your client needs to have their loan secured. If it's not secured, then you need to speak with your client and tell them that if they go on and they don't get the loan, really what they've become at that point is a cash buyer, and their deposits are at risk. So if they didn't close and you didn't get an extension, the seller can take their deposit if they don't close. So that's very, very important, because as a buyer's agent, we can never lose our client's deposit. So again, it's not your decision unilaterally at that point what to do. You want to speak with your client and tell them, and you'd want to start talking to them before the 7-day mark. we're getting close to you needing your financing commitment. You're both speaking to their lender, kind of seeing where they are. But 7 days prior to closing, if they're getting a loan, they either need to have that loan, be willing to become a cash buyer, meaning they have no more financing contingency, and they don't close on time, they could lose their deposit, or you ask for an extension. And if you send an email to the seller's agent saying, we're exercising our financing commitment. If you don't give us an extension until this date, we're canceling the contract. Very explicit. That way your client's protected. So that's how that works. Sometimes it can get confusing, but for everybody, really no confusion, too important. The other contingency, which actually comes first, and that's number 12, that's the property inspection right to cancel. So there's a number of days. This contract I did, unfortunately didn't get accepted, but it was 7 days we put in there. But if you leave it blank, it's 15 days. So you have 15 days, or depending on what you fill in, to get the home inspection done. And if anything comes up, you're negotiating with your client, and then the seller to to either fix things. We obviously, we don't like things being fixed. We'd rather have money off because it's cleaner. But if you get to the point where now, it's day 13 and you're still negotiating, you need to tell your client that, if we don't get these items resolved one way or the other, we need to send to the seller's agent a note saying, we're canceling the contract. It can be done in an email, but the words canceling the contract have to be there. If we don't get this, and this, we're canceling the contract. So I really encourage everybody to read number 8 in its entirety. That's the financing contingency. And number 12, the home inspection contingency. So read those, understand those, and if you have any questions about them, ask me. The other thing that came up this week was, and I don't know if there's any confusion on it, but I'm going to just touch upon it quickly, is that here there's the initial deposit amount and then there's the second deposit amount. Those amounts have nothing to do with the person's loan. They are two mutually exclusive things. So I've run into agents that sometimes think that the amount of the deposit and the amount that the person is putting down for their loan are the same. I was up I was up in Boston. Just a quick when I was working up there. Just a quick story. So I was the listing agent. There was this new agent from, a white shoe firm who we won't mention. It was her first deal. She got confused and she put $60,000 down for the person's escrow account, which was the amount of his down payment. It was a $300,000 purchase. He was financing 80%, putting down 20%. She got confused and thought that 20% was the amount of money she had to put into escrow, which was wrong. Then, unfortunately, what happened, she then let the financing commitment, number 8, expire, turned her client into a cash buyer, and now we're holding $60,000 of his money. She also sent an email, and sometimes like when you hit, there's emails from like way down here, and she had said not so nice things about my client, and she sent it to my client, and my client read it. And she was like so wanting that $60,000 because she was, upset because what this woman said. The story turned out well. The buyer ended up getting his financing. All was fine. No problem. The deal closed. But, if he didn't get his financing for whatever reason, that agent would have lost him $60,000. So, again, you want to limit the amount of money you're putting. So the deposits are just that. They're your good faith deposits to let the seller know that you're not going to leave, go buy something else. It's the skin in the game, but they are totally different from the amount of money the person is putting down on their loan. They have nothing to do with each other. So do not get those two things confused, because really, if somebody's putting 10% down and it's a $200,000 house, you don't give $20,000 for your deposits. You give as little as possible, because if there is a problem, there's less exposure. Couple more things and then we'll wrap up. You're moving forward, your deal, something happens, you either need an extension, there was a transaction where a buyer couldn't close, and she was still trying to get her financing. She was willing to give the seller a $3,000. And there ended up being an amendment drawn up that kind of memorialized this. Any amendments, when you fill out the standard contract, the reason why they call it the standard contract is because if you fill it out, you don't change anything, all is good. It's been approved by the Realtor Association, the lawyers of Florida. But when you start doing amendments, those are areas where you can potentially have issues. Maybe things come up that are not, we're not representing our client as well as we should be. So any amendments, just send them to me before they get signed, bounce them off me, call me, tell me what it is. Let me just take a quick look. It'll help you. And again, it's all about great customer service. Always be thinking that way. And that's, in essence, how to get that accomplished. And then the last thing.
Can I just say, in
Yeah.
that case, also Phil had me call the lender to make sure that addendum was mine and to make sure that addendum was okay, because he didn't really like it. So I called the lender before doing it to make sure this wasn't going to mess up the loan. And I wouldn't have thought about that if I hadn't talked to Phil. So.
Right, because what could happen, the woman now, her name's Kim, had $3,000 she was giving to the seller, non-refundable if she can't close. So she was going to potentially lose that money. So we wouldn't want the amendment to be written in a way that the lender then can't make the loan. So, you just want to bounce it off. We bounced it off the lender, we bounced it off the title company, they were fine, so then it all became fine. So it's just making sure that, and you'll hear me say this, getting a deal closed, there's like little landmines along the way, and you want to just make sure, you're not creating any landmines, and that, kind of where they are. So typically where they are, number 8, that's a landmine. If you don't, keep the person's financing contingency and you turn them into a cash buyer unbeknownst to yourself and they can't close, you could lose their deposit. And then same with, number 12, the home inspection, you have that contingency. If that contingency period goes by and you're not done negotiating and you can't come to agreement with the seller, they can't really back out unless they lose their deposit. So those two concepts are important to understand. So, and then the last thing, we've been seeing a lot of, since we do a lot of buyer representation here, we've been seeing a lot of, when we get something under agreement, then the listing agent puts it, the status is then active with contract, as opposed to pending. So as a buyer's agent and for our clients, the downside of active with contract is this. So, yeah, we've got it under agreement. Now it's active with contract. So then they continue to show the property. They get another offer that maybe is higher than the offer they accepted, or they get an offer from a cash buyer, and they have that during your during your home inspection period. That seller is going to be a lot less negotiable about any home inspection item. So, because they've got, if you don't buy it, meaning your client doesn't buy it, then, they've got somebody else right behind you that may be giving them a better deal. So they're looking to get rid of your client. Any excuse, so they're going to give your client really nothing. So if you found stuff during the home inspection and they've got a backup offer that's better, it's tough to get that to the finish line. So what I've been doing lately is putting in the additional terms, the listing agent to mark the listing as pending as opposed to active with contract. Now, it's a negotiating item. You want to mention it to your client. You want to explain to them, why that's important. if the seller, doesn't want to do it, I would never lose a deal over it. I'd let, it go to active with contract. But maybe you can sneak that in, get that in, have it marked pending, and then you really don't have to worry that, they've got another offer that they're sort of sitting on, and sort of weakens your position when you get to the, to the home inspection phase. So again, any of these, the financing contingency, the home inspection contingency, the amount of deposits versus the amount of down payment the person's, putting, sending me addendums, if you're changing the standard purchase and sale agreement, I'm all ears. I'm here to help all the time. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Steve, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you for being here. Jerry, as always, good job. And we'll sign off now. Thank you.
My iPad ran out of space and stopped recording,
Oh, really?
so I had to figure out that, which I did, but it doesn't have most of the thing on there.